So my first video was gonna be something that was like genuinely contributing something and like well thought out. And then I said fuck it because I'm lazy. And so I said, alright, I'll just like watch some dumb right-wing anti-Marxist video and that'll be good. So let's endure this together.
Was a journalist, revolutionary socialist, economist, and philosopher born in Germany in 1818. He was a staunch opponent of capitalism and was responsible for developing Marxism, which has formed the basis of some truly overwhelmingly destructive political, social, and economic philosophies. The fundamental principle of Marxism is this: the capitalist state is responsible for perpetuating a system that encourages the wealthy upper-middle-class bourgeoisie to exploit the low-wage industrial proletariat in a class war. So,
I don't think he really understands what he's saying. Like, to exploit them in a class war. No. In a class war. A class war is war. He understands that. Like, exploit them in a class war. I just don't, like, even understand what he thinks he's talking about.
Marx maintained that the proletariat must assume socio-economic control through means of dictatorship in order to create a classless and socialist societal order.
I mean, again, he says through means of dictatorship. Well, no. Through the dictatorship of the proletariat, which is, like, the complete opposite of a dictatorship. It's like the most democratic thing there is. So I don't really know. Again, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Like, he's saying the words, but he doesn't actually grasp the concept.
Our capitalist system is based on the idea that the means of production rests in the hands of private owners, an elite few who control industry, factories, businesses, shops, and corporations. The people who work for these businesses have no say in how they are run and do not share any kind of joint ownership. Marx had a problem with this setup and believed it promoted inequality.
Well, no. That's not the problem. The problem is the stealing of surplus value, not inequality. I mean, it also promotes inequality, but that's kind of a different thing.
Was convinced that only a workers' revolution could resolve this conflict and restore some semblance of equality. The result was a system known as communism, in which all means of production and enterprise...
He has a liberation theology. It's like a sickle with a Christian cross. Surely if you search up, like, hammer and sickle, this isn't what comes up. Like, what the fuck?
...would be owned by everyone. Marx also believed that modern industrial work was sterile, devoid of meaning and humanity, and alienating to most people. Because capitalism was primarily concerned with generating profits as efficiently as possible, work became highly mechanized and dehumanizing, where specialized assembly line labor required no individuality or personal ingenuity or creativity. Therefore, it was easy for workers to become disillusioned with their occupations and concerned that they could be easily replaced and made redundant if economic needs required it. In short, a capitalist system made people feel expendable. The primary gripe Marx had...
Like, yeah, kind of, but that's not really what the theory of alienation is about. Alienation doesn't just apply to your work. Alienation applies to the society and the people as a whole. I mean, look at, like, for example, South Korea. Like, high suicide rate, mass depression. You can't tell me that that is not an alienated society. Like, it has nothing really... I mean, it has something to do with the work, but it's not just the work. Like, everything is so dumbed down, and it's like the very basic, like, one little tiny sliver of a concept that doesn't really encompass anything.
...with capitalists was that their profits were in effect a form of theft. They did little to no real work, while their employees generated all of their wealth through arduous labor. This, he believed, was nothing more than exploitation of the labor class. His theories also proposed that capitalism was wasteful and produced overabundance and far more products than we could ever consume.
I mean, the theory of overproduction isn't really a problem for people, it's more of a problem for capitalism. I mean, overabundance is fine. I mean, obviously, ecologically, it's kind of terrible, but economically, in reality, it's very good for people, but it's not good for capitalism. So, like, no, not really.
Marx saw this as a sign that in a large and efficient industrial economic system, few people genuinely needed to work. This meant that the majority of people could enjoy more leisure time and shouldn't be concerned with the negative connotation associated with being unemployed.
What? What? No. No, Marx thought that since we can mechanize things, let's have more people do fewer jobs, which will allow everyone as a whole to work less. But what is all of this negative stigma of being unemployed? That has what? That has nothing to do with Marx. That's something that is made from capitalism, really made from like the American perception of things, where like, oh, you're on welfare, get a job, you lazy bum, like that kind of mentality. Nothing to do with Marx. I don't know what he's talking about.
While a small number of people would toil tirelessly, the masses were free to enjoy their own personal pursuits. This sounds all wonderful and utopian in theory. The problem is, the system is even less fair than the capitalist system Marx criticized. This is because it states that those who contribute the most to society, work the hardest, and provide the most ingenuity are no different to those who contribute the least and hardly work at all.
No, it's like the exact opposite. People who are genuinely talented, people who genuinely work hard, usually don't have that opportunity because they have to focus on working at fucking Subway or whatever just to live. Like, imagine how many Einsteins live in Nigeria and just they don't have the option to pursue their intelligence and their brilliance. Like, I don't understand what his point is here. This is completely unfounded.
It also created societal and cultural stagnation. Marx also believed
No. Cultural stagnation. What? Like, for example, in the Soviet Union, there was great leaps in film and art and music. What are you talking about? Stagnation. That's bullshit.
that marriage, a fundamental supporting structure of civilization, was oppressive to women and little more than an economic arrangement and a means by which the state exploited men and women. It's not hard to see how movements like feminism have their roots in Marxist doctrine. For more on this, check out my video, Marxist Feminism.
Like, yeah, in Marx's day, it was purely an economic arrangement. I mean, you had people like marrying princesses to foreign kingdoms to get fucking alliances. That is nothing if not an economic and political arrangement. I mean, I think he actually called it like prostitution. And Marx is not saying that we should abolish like all concept of marriage or something, or that we should all just have like polyamorous gay orgies or something, which we should, but that's like unrelated to the Marxism. He's saying that really the state should not be involved in this, and that actually capitalism is kind of it's affecting marriage and love and genuine human emotion negatively. It's making it less valuable. It's making it an economic matter rather than a personal and emotional and a human matter.
There's a marriage and MGTOW, link below in the description. Marx's beliefs and philosophies weren't taken all that seriously at the time, but there were those who considered them revolutionary and avant-garde, and so...
What are you talking about? Marx was thrown out of almost every country he went to because he was considered so dangerous. What do you mean he wasn't taken seriously? That's just fucking stupid. That's just ignorance.
Sought to incorporate them into future socio-political structures. The cataclysmic failures of experimental socialist projects and communist regimes that followed provided unequivocal evidence.
A catastrophic failure. Let's see. Soviet Union became a world superpower in 30 years. Maoist China became a world superpower in, I think, as well, 30 years. Soviet Union, first country into space. First country to have a dog in space. First country to have a man in space, a woman in space. A first country, or not first country, but one of the earlier countries to make universal suffrage a thing. I mean, I don't know what he's talking about. I mean, the Soviet Union didn't collapse under Stalin. It collapsed when they implemented market reforms under Brezhnev and Khrushchev. What is he talking about?
That Marxist principles could only be sustained through planned economies, dictatorships, and oppression of the masses.
Well, I mean, obviously, yeah, planned economy. We all want planned economy. That's not really a point. But dictatorship, I mean, no. I mean, you could say authoritarianism, yes. I mean, that is a criticism of Soviet Union and Maoist China. You could say, okay, they're too authoritarian, and that would be a criticism, but dictator, no. I mean, you could, like, is Stalin a dictator? No. Stalin was elected. Stalin actually tried to resign 4 times. I mean, dictator? No. And also, oppression of the masses. That's just, that means nothing. That's meaningless. Like, what does that even mean? Oppression of the masses?
The reason socialism is fundamentally flawed is that it destroys the meritocracy and fails to reward human endeavor and hard work. It suppresses.
No. Marx was like the most pro-meritocracy person ever. He actually thought that capitalism limited meritocracy. Again, like going back to how many Einsteins in Nigeria are there? I would assume that just statistically there have been many. So no, that's just a stupid misunderstanding of Marx and socialism.
And disincentivizes innovation and attempts to keep the best and brightest down to the level of the lowest common denominator.
What? How? Fails to produce innovation. I mean, okay, I guess if you call like the first satellite failing to produce innovation, creating one of the most popular guns in existence and most effective guns in existence is a failure. Pioneering film is failure. Great leaps in art and music are failure. Like, what? No. What are you talking about? And best and brightest down. Like, no. If anything, that's what capitalism does. Socialism frees people to pursue their interests, to pursue academic things, whereas capitalism wants you to work some job that you may really probably have no interest in and really doesn't allow you any freedom. Does the subway worker have freedom to innovate? No, not at all. But under socialism, you have this freedom to innovate, to theorize.
Free trade capitalist societies may not be perfect or even fully stable at times, hence the reason their economic collapses are so utterly devastating. But they do lift people from poverty and promote more freedom and personal economic prosperity. Just ask yourself.
No. That is complete bullshit. They lift people from poverty? I mean, I think this was like a Huey, what is his name? Huey Newton quote. Or no, it's Malcolm X quote. They say, if you stab someone with an 8-inch knife and you pull it out 4 inches, that is not progress. You can't say capitalism is lifting people from poverty that it created. If you remove capitalism, there's no more poverty. Like, it's solving a problem that wasn't there before. It made a problem and then it kind of half didn't really solve it. So no.
Which country would you rather live in, North Korea or South Korea?
No, because South Korea receives massive aid and free trade policy with the entire world, whereas North Korea is basically embargoed by the entire world. Also, South Korea has more it has more farmland, whereas North Korea is more mountainous and has less suitable farmland. In addition to this, basically, after the Soviet Union fell, North Korea no longer had electricity because that's where they were getting oil from. So, I mean, like, no, that's just stupid.
Socialism requires a totalitarian level of government intervention to regulate every aspect of society. Capitalism.
No, that's just wrong. Socialism, I mean, was the Paris Commune like some sort of totalitarian society? No. Was like the Bavarian Socialist Republic some sort of totalitarian society? No. Was Catalonia some sort of totalitarian society? No. I mean, really, was the Soviet Union a totalitarian society? No. I mean, that's just, I mean, this makes me a stereotype, but that is bourgeois propaganda.
Does not. The historic record of Marxist philosophy.
Okay, wait, sorry, I keep posing this at a weird point, but capitalism does not require authoritarianism. No. Batista. I mean, the puppet dictators in South Korea, South Vietnam. I mean, the Shah, Saudi monarchy, dictators in France, dictators in Indonesia, I mean, the Philippines now. What are you talking about? That's just bullshit. I mean, that's blatant bullshit. You can't even deny that capitalism eventually needs dictators. I mean, let's see, why did Hitler come to power? Well, capitalism was failing in Germany, and communists were becoming more and more popular because they offered a real solution. So at this point in history, people either side with the far left or the far right. They either side with the communists or the fascists, whatever form they may take. And in this case, they sided with the fascists to preserve capitalism. So, like, no, that's complete bullshit.
Philosophies is clear. They do not work and merely produce the highest levels of autocracy, censorship, social unrest, poverty, and starvation.
No. I mean, poverty? What? I mean, the Soviet Union, if anything, lifted basically all of its citizens out of poverty. The literacy rate was increased to above 90%, as opposed to Russia before, which was something like 20%. I mean, Burkina Faso, where they vaccinated children, promoted women's rights. Maoist China, where they took land from the landlords. I mean, what is he even talking about at this point? This is all just bullshit. He's just making things up at this point.
On the planet. Take your pick of nations who have attempted to adopt them in some shape or form. The Soviet Union, China, Cuba, the aforementioned North Korea, not exactly the utopian beacons of civilization.
Yeah, let's talk about Soviet Union, China, North Korea. I mean, let's talk about, firstly, the Soviet Union. I mean, yeah, it wasn't a utopia, because it's real life. Soviet Union had many problems, but that was mainly due to material conditions. Russia was shit. It was complete shit. There was no basis for building socialism. It had to be created out of thin air. There was no industry, no infrastructure, no people who were ready for democracy. There was no educated masses. There was still many peasants. I mean, these are not ideal conditions for building socialism. Yet they became a world superpower. I mean, for example, let's look at this little country right here, the DDR. Like, if we compare, in the DDR, there was universal health care, and I believe that the average lifespan was something like 80 years, where in West Germany, what was it? Federal Republic of Germany. FDR? I don't know. I believe that during that time, when it was more privatized, that the lifespan was 60 years. Or, for example, in Russia, we see a leap from 30 years life expectancy to, I believe, 75 years life expectancy in 1945, or actually a little bit later than that. Or, again, Burkina Faso, like, these people just, they tell lies. They don't even feel the need to back their statements up. They just assume that they're correct. And they just repeat this bullshit. And they must know it's bullshit, but, whatever.
They aimed to be. As Milton Friedman said, the most harm of all is done when power is in the hands of people who are absolutely persuaded by the purity of their instincts and their intentions. He also said, a society that puts equality before freedom will get neither. A society that puts freedom before equality will get a high degree of both.
What the fuck? That makes no sense. They weren't putting equality first or something, no. They were simply creating a level playing field, as I would hope everyone advocates for. A level playing field, allowing everyone to start from the same position, allowing everyone access to education so that truly the best and brightest will shine. So this whole bullshit about, what was it? Puts equality before freedom. Like, what? Do you think there was no freedom in the Soviet Union? No. In fact, I would say it was more free than the United States at that time. I mean, they had racial equality, a wonderful system of democracy, which did have its problems, but again, like, yes, it had problems, but that was due to material conditions. So this is just bullshit. Yeah, so thanks for watching this. I'm glad you tuned in to me being too lazy to actually make a video of substance and just screaming about someone who doesn't understand Marxism. So have a good day.